Will be so I want to welcome everyone to the day one of our CEO time warp. So you might be wondering, Lissa, what's a time warp? I'm really glad you asked. A time warp. Think like Narnia, right? When they walked through the wardrobe, or like Marvel. My family loves Marvel movies, and they step through a portal. What happens? You like step into this new dimension where time works differently. It feels more spacious. It's very intentional. It may be really intense in some of those situations, but you kind of have this like forgetting everything else, right? Hello, goodbye, distractions, because you're in the right place at the right time, doing what you're made to do that's connected to a bigger purpose. And that results in a different outcome, which I call roadie, time invested. And you're going to hear me talking about that quite a bit over the next couple of days. So maybe you're not here to rule Narnia or to defeat some bad guys, but you probably are here to grow a business and live a life that is faithful and fruitful. And so we are going to enter a biblical time paradigm. It's not just more productive. We're not here to check more boxes in less time. Okay. So if that's what you thought this was all about, sorry, not sorry. That's not what we're going to be talking about today. But we want to make sure that our time is being fruitful, right? And if you look at scripture, we often hear this concept of a hundredfold fruitfulness. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't happen because of our superpowers, but his. So if you downloaded your workbook, and if you didn't, you can go to the event dashboard to grab that. Let me drop the link to the dashboard here. It's redeemhertime.com/dashboard. I will drop that in there. At the very top is a link to download the workbook. If you don't have that in front of you, it's okay. The paper, if you're able to, just because there are going to be things that you're going to want to jot down, and we are going to workshop through something today. But that verse I put on the front was very intentional because so often when it comes to our time, at least living in this world, we feel like there's not enough. Who here feels like, or has ever said, or just recently said, there's not enough time? If only I had time. When I had time. If I have time. After this, I'll have time. They're all looking at our lack. And so I want to ground us in truth. What is true about our time? So that verse I chose that's on the front cover is 2 Corinthians 10:8, which says, "And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work." And what I love, and literally it was so God, my Bible reading literally had me in this chapter this morning. Like as if God knew this was happening today. Verse 9 talks about how he is the one that gives to everyone. And then verse 10 reminds us he is the supplier and the multiplier, right? Our time is not our own. He has entrusted it to us. We'll talk about that today. And not just so we can manage it, keep it contained, but so we can multiply it, so we can expand the purpose for which he gave it to us. But we have a role, and that is to invest it, to sow it in the ground so that it will produce the harvest. And you know what happens between the sowing and the reaping if you're a farmer? Time. There is time in between, right? And so time is so important. So as you're coming in, if you haven't already, drop in the chat what time zone you are coming in from, because I would love to see kind of where we're all at. And here's the thing, no matter where you are in the world, we this week are going to be operating in kingdom time, right? And here's what I want you to know. It doesn't have to take decades or years for you to see the growth you want to see in your business. What if it could happen in 12 months? What if it could happen in 12 weeks? Like, how would that be for scaling, right? Because with God, there is always an abundant roadie, and He is beyond time, right? But that doesn't happen when we do busyness as usual. So we are this week going to experience this radical shift in how we approach time. And you're going to hear me talking about two terms. I'm going to introduce them to you real quick now: a busyness owner time and CEO time. Busyness owner time and CEO time. Now, before I get into what that is, I want you to know that in my private work with clients one on one, they pay me upwards of $18,000. Why? Because this right here, what we are doing this week, has so much value. So, even though this is a free event, this is not like all the time management tips and hacks that you've been Googling that only get you so far. Has anyone tried some of those things you found? And then that order went to disorder right when you got everything all lined up, like it really didn't change anything. It just kind of made it look pretty on the outside. That's because time management is not the solution. It's actually the problem. We'll talk about that this week. So why am I telling you this? Number one, because I want you to know, don't want to scare you off. There are plenty of ways to work with me, that are very that you can make work, right? But here's the thing: I want you to show up fully present, focused, turn off distractions. Even if you are watching the replay right now, I want you to show up every day as if you're going to get $18,000 out of this event. Because when you truly implement this concept of time scaling, it has the potential to transform not only your business, but also your life. Okay, who would like to see some transformation this week? Drop that in the chat. And I love when I see the chat going on. Thank you. No distractions over there because it tells me that you're there. So I'm going to make sure that I've got this so that I can see it as best as possible. And I also will be coming back to the chat afterwards to really go back and pull out some questions and needs and things like that. So if there are things that come up as we go, please make sure you drop them in there and I will circle back to them, right? And I will make sure that we connect there, okay? Because we are here to no longer be pulled in so many directions. I just had somebody tell me that this morning, right? She feels like she's always behind and she's always trying to cram more into her day and week. And she's spinning her wheels, trying to grow her business and take care of her family and lead a team. And guess what? She's missing out on the people and things that matter most. When you not only get a handle on your time, but you actually start multiplying your time, what is that worth you? Like, what kind of impact do you think you could make through a business that is scaling? Not just one that's like barely surviving, right? Like, drop impact in the chat if you're like, I want the time I invest in my business to make a bigger impact. I'm not just here to check boxes. Good. I'm not either, right? Which is why we are not going to be just doing fluff this week. Each day, you are going to walk away with a simple, sustainable time scaling tool that you can start using right away to turn your time and your team's time into your number one scaling asset, right? To help you build your list easier. Who wants to build their list easier? To help you sign more clients. Who wants more clients? To help you bring in consistent revenue. Who wants consistent revenue? Like, and who wants to keep growing in those things because there isn't, a cap. Here's the thing I want to tell you right now. Time solves it all. Time solves it all. You can go and find all of the strategies out there, all the things the gurus are telling you to do those things. But if and until you learn to multiply your time, none of those will work, or they will only get you so far. And scaling will feel hard and heavy and like it's taking a really long time. So I want to encourage you with something. I just looked up these statistics this week because I want to make sure I had them correct. Okay. When you think about something, guess what? You have a 10% chance that you're actually going to do it. Woohoo! You're more than most people who are just so busy they don't even think about it. When you actually write those things out, aka like when you guys are taking notes here today and you're actually doing the homework and things like that and the things we're workshopping and look at it, okay, you have to look at it, then you raise your chances of doing it to 42%. That's pretty good, right? Like almost 50%. A lot of people would be happy with 50%. I don't know about you, but I don't stop there. When you share it with other people, aka coming into the community, you now increase up to 76% that you are going to actually do this thing. And then when you couple that with an accountability meeting, now you're up at 95%. Most people are not operating in the 95% because they're not even taking time to think about it, let alone to write it out, to share it, and to invite accountability. But that's what I am inviting you guys to this week. So if for some reason you found this and you are not officially registered yet, then you can head right now to redeemhertime.com/warp. I'll drop that link in the chat. And that is how you can make sure that you get the emails from me with the reminders, you get access to the bonuses, you get access to the workbook. If you've already registered, then you should already have a link to the dashboard. I will drop that in the chat there as well, redeemhertime.com/dashboard. And on there is also a link to the community. So if you're not a member of the Redeem Her Time community yet, just so you know, I give permission and direction to talk about your business any day of the week. I just had somebody come in and share a whole bunch of stuff about what she's doing, why she's doing it, and who she's looking to meet. Yes, yes, and yes. I don't care what day of the week it is. You don't have to wait. You should be talking about it. But inside the community this week, each day, I am posting a devotional that ties into what we're talking about that day. Each day afterwards, there will be a homework post. Here's where I'm encouraging you to go. Your homework will only take you a few minutes, but I'm encouraging you to not just do it, but to now go share it, because now you're going to go up to that 76%. It's also where you can ask questions. You get some feedback from me. Consider me your coach this week, right? Like I told you, people are paying $18,000 to get me in their pocket for a whole year, right? What could you get out of me this week? Okay, so make sure that you go check the dashboard and join the community if you haven't already. And also up at the top, you will see an opportunity to get my eyes on your time. Okay, I am inviting you to apply for a time scaling strategy session. Now, the reason I'm doing applications is I only opened up 10 spots because this isn't for everyone. Okay, for those of you who are really serious about implementing what we're working on this week, because you really do want to scale your business in the quickest way, right, which is going to be time scaling, then I want to invite you to apply. It'll just take you a few minutes to do that. We're going to look at where is your time currently going and what results are you getting? Like, what are your growth goals? What's your current level of team? And then we're going to lay out your 90-day time scaling priorities and action steps. Okay, so that is at the very top of the dashboard. I encourage you, don't wait till the end of the week. Like, get in and grab one of those spots. And then one more little bonus I just want to make sure you guys know about before we head into day one. Here's the thing. I did a survey actually in the community and I asked, like, where are you with team? Do you already have a team? Are you in the process of bringing on a team? Are you dreaming of a team? Most people voted that they're dreaming of a team. Okay, so I want to speak to those of you who are still dreaming of a team, or maybe haven't even thought of that yet. Okay, hold on, because hopefully I'm going to help you see that you can and should have people helping you sooner rather than later, as well as those of you who already have one, two, three, 10, I don't know, 15, how many people you have, right? Because here's the thing. If you don't learn to scale your time and help your team do that, you are going to be wasting a lot of time and money. And so I have a very special bonus that's going to be available to 5 people to be part of something called a time scaling team intensive. And so when you grab that call, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about where you are right now and how this can help you. But before we go any further, because there's so much I could tell you, like let's invite the Lord to be with us first before we get into all of this. So, Lord, we just thank you for today. We thank you for your presence. I thank you for just how you have put us in the right place at the right time, and you've given us a purpose for the time in front of us. And so I pray that right now that we would be present to that we would be, yeah, willing to listen and learn and try and think in new ways so that we can be good stewards of the time that you have given us. So God, I ask your blessing over this time, over everyone who's on here live or who's listening to a replay, that you would plant seeds that are going to produce abundant fruit for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Okay, day one is called Work Less Hours with Time Scaling Strategies. How many of you would like to work less hours and, and make more dollars? Okay, drop less in the chat if that's you. Most of the people that I work with their problem is not that they're not working enough. Once in a while, I run into somebody who's like, yeah, if it's a good day, I get around to like 1 or 2 hours a day. But most of us, it's usually this like, I'm working more than I want to, or I know that I feel like I need to work more and I don't want to, or I can't, right? So we're going to talk today. There are 3 things you need to know. I already mentioned them, but let me say them again. And you're going to hear me repeat things. So if you hear me repeat something, it means it's really important. If you want to scale your business, you need to know what to do, when to do it, and how it's connected to something bigger. Okay? What to do, when to do it, and how it's connected to something better, bigger. So today is the when. Okay? When it's time to work, and spoiler alert, when it's not time to work. How many of you struggle to shut off business? Maybe it's shutting off your laptop. Maybe it's not picking your phone back up again after dinner. Maybe it's like turning off the gears, right? Yes, me. I see all this in the chat, right? Like as business owners, I mean, it's not a bad thing that we are passionate about what we do and we're always thinking about how we can do it better. And yet, what are we missing out on when we're not doing that? And so today I promised you that I'm going to share with you one daily habit that finally allowed me to finally stick to my schedule. And I went from working all day and night with not much to show for it to closing my laptop early with, hey, honey, got another sale conversation over dinner. So I will be sharing that with you today. And here's the thing. This is actually really perfect timing because when this is going live, we are literally just days away from Labor Day weekend, right? Like the unofficial end of summer and beginning of fall, right? And so it's this time to transition, right? As we think about what do we want our time to look like? What do we want our business to look like as we start heading towards the last quarter of the year? So I want to ask you, how do you feel about your numbers when you look at the last 3 months? How do you feel about them? Are you like, wow, like this is like so amazing, I can't even believe it? Or are you like, I'm not sure what happened? Or are you like, okay, like I'm right where I thought I wanted to be, and I'm on pace to hit the goals that I set for the year. Like, I would love to see in the chat, are you ahead of where you wanted and dreamed of being? Are you right on track? Or do you feel like you're still trying to, you're somehow behind? And just so you know, we're gonna have people all over the place. I have a feeling most are on the behind side, right? I even talked to a multiple six-figure earner this week, and she told me, Lisa, my numbers are down this summer because I pulled back, right? And that's actually really good news because she recognized that her ROTI, her return on time invested, had everything to do with how she spent her time, right? So I want that to be good news. If you feel behind, and you're like, I'm seeing a gap, here's where I am, but here's where I would like to be, then all you have to do is focus on the time piece of it, right? And that is really going to bridge that gap in between there. Okay. So if you're seeing a gap or feeling a gap, or you just want to grow it to the next level, maybe you want to change what that looks like. Right now, I would love to hear, and as people are coming in, let me just keep admitting them in the chat, if you're willing to do this, and I'm going to have you do it in your workbook here in just a minute, write down what is the current number of hours that you are working your business per week? What is the current number of hours that you are working your business per week? And what is your monthly revenue? Now, again, keep in mind those times that you're going back to things later on in the day, right? And here's where I want you to be really honest with yourself about, okay, how much time is this getting? And what is this producing? That's the first number we need to look at, right? We have to be honest and real with where we are. And don't let where you are determine who you are, right? It's just where you are, right? Now, how many hours would you like to be working a week? And how much would you like to be earning per month from that time? I want you to drop that one in the chat. Okay. I would love to hear how many hours would you love to work? And here's where I don't want you to feel bad if your answer is 10 hours. If 10 hours is what you want to do and that is what works best in this season of your life, then let's do it, right? Hopefully, you're not going to put 60, 70, 80 hours, right? Because a lot of us came from that kind of a work environment and we came into business in order to get time freedom. And yet, what happens is so often as business owners, we don't have time freedom because we're working so hard trying to make something work, and still coming up what feels like empty. So, I'd love to hear how many hours would you like to be working and what would you like to be earning from that? Okay. And if you've got two different businesses, then, maybe you could separate them into two different boxes. And so that way you can see what each one is because they might not be even, right? They might be a little bit different. Okay. And I want you to kind of keep that number in front of you today and all this week, those numbers in front of you, because everything we're going to do today is going to be working on our on time scaling, right? We are going to be looking at how do I do this thing, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But I would love to hear from you. Like when you hear the word scaling, what do you think of? Or when you think of or hear of scaling your business, what does that mean? What does that sound like to you? What would that look like for you? I'd love for you to drop that in the chat so I can just kind of see what's going through your brain as we're talking about this. Okay, and thank you for those of you who are putting this in here about how many hours and what you'd like to make. Here's where we get strategic about that time, right? Yeah. More revenue per hour invested. Love it. Notice the time connection, more reach, more team, more income, more audience, and more. I hear a lot of more, reach more people at once. Okay, there's some more is definitely goes in there. We hear a lot in the business world about scaling our business. And so I want to introduce a new concept that no one's talking about, and that is time scaling. So as a former teacher, I'm going to start with a definition. Okay, now here's actually what happened. I first went to look up scaling in on my phone to see like what I could find. It literally, the first definition listed is removing scales from a fish. Well, unless that's your business, that's probably not what you're wanting to focus on right now, right? So if you scroll down a little bit more, in business, scaling means increasing your revenue without a corresponding increase in cost. So being more efficient with your processes so you get more output without more expenses. It's very focused on the profit margin, right? But here's the thing. Scaling is not just about profit margin. It's also about your time. It's about getting your time back, and it's about getting more back from your time because time is your most valuable resource. And so when we talk about time scaling, we are not talking about putting more time in. In fact, there are a lot of more things that some of you guys mentioned that you don't have to do in order to scale. Okay. What we are talking about is creating exponentially more impact and income because those are connected when someone's paying you for the impact you're making in their life, right? Without a corresponding increase in time, even while scaling back your hours. Yes, it's possible to work less and earn more so that you can go and live the life that you're called to, so that you can take care of yourself, so that you can be involved in those ministries or with your grandkids or whatever that looks like. But the reason that most business owners don't ever experience that is because they think that in order to grow their business, it just has to keep taking more of them and more of their time. And so that is why I teach something called the ROTI method, ROTI. You're going to hear me say this over and over and over again over the next few days. So write this down. ROTI method is return on time invested. Like time, this intangible thing, we want to make into a measurable growth asset. It's not magic when your business grows, it's metrics, right? It's looking at what is the return on my time invested, because then you can make strategic decisions about where to invest it. And it is possible when you have the right time scaling tools we'll talk about this week to not just talk about, I want to grow my business, but to actually see it happen and see it happen in less time than you would think. So before we go any further, I want to tell you a couple things because as I've been talking to people, I want you to know like you're in the right place if number one, you know you're called to business, right? God has called you to the business that you're in. And I encourage you, go over and introduce yourself in the community or reintroduce yourself and tell us what that God-given business is. So if you're called to business and you want to multiply your impact as you're doing it. And this is for all levels of business. I work with women who are just starting out and haven't made a dime yet. And I work with women who have multiple six figures and have a team. Because here's the thing, we all get 24 hours, right? The amount of time doesn't change as your business grows. But guess what? The problem gets worse as you max out your time and then you start bringing on team and then it starts costing you in added expenses, stress, like not being fully present to what matters, which is why you're not going to scale to your first six figures or another. If you just keep thinking it's all the more stuff out here, more offers, more team, more platforms, more strategies, or even more time, because there still won't be enough hours. Okay. Time is the key to scaling. And we need to start looking at this as not our biggest obstacle, but our greatest opportunity. I'm going to show you how to do that. Here's the other thing I want to tell you. The women I work with have a schedule, right? You're here because you put this on your schedule, right? Like you're not on the couch binging Netflix and Haagen-Dazs, because you are committed to your business and you said you were going to be here, right? Or you were going to watch the replay at this time, right? Here's the thing. So often we can say we have a schedule, but if you actually look at where your time is going, we're pulled off task all day long. How many of you can relate? How many of you get pulled off task, right? Just say me down in the chat so we know we're not alone, right? There are distractions, overflowing inboxes, ring dings pings, the dogs need something, the kids need something, your husband needs something. Suddenly the laundry feels important, right? We're reacting all day long to everyone else's requests. Good. I'm glad I'm not, not alone here and you're not either, right? And then what happens? We end up working all day long and or feel like we're working all day long and we're still not done or we're still not really seeing that level of results. And so that may be you too. Like we talked about this last night in our community call. You may have a schedule that's your phone calendar. I'm just going to say sorry, not sorry. I don't call that a time scaling schedule. You cannot see how your time flows when you're scrolling, right? That's just one appointment after the next. Even if you're using a Google Calendar or a paper planner that has a weekly spread, like that's better. But for so many women I work with, it's really just a list of appointments and to-do items with timestamps. What you need if you truly want to scale is a time scaling schedule. And I actually teach a hybrid method. So it does involve some paper and some digital. But what will help you focus on what's going to move the needle and what's going to be distraction proof? Who would like distraction proof? Drop that in the chat, right? And what is going to give you margin to respond to the unexpected and not work all the time. Time to unplug and rest so that you're on the fast track to scaling your impact, not scaling your burnout. Okay. So this week is not for the woman who's like willing to settle for being good with time. I hear that all the time. Listen, I'm good with time. Okay. Well, we're here to take time to a new level, not because we're putting more time into what we're doing, but because we're understanding the value of time and the return on that time invested. Okay. So everything that we do is always going to be grounded in biblical truth. And so we always want to come at this, not as the world does, right? Like Again, we have earthly time and we have kingdom time. My friend calls it kingdom standard time. I love that. I can't take credit for it. I wish I would have thought of it, but I love that. Kingdom standard time. Who wants to be in KST? Drop that in the chat, right? The way that we approach KST, kingdom standard time, should look different, and so should the results of that time. Because if you look at the world around us, Jesus described this in Matthew 6. They're running around, those without God, chasing after these things, right? What they want and need. He even describes it as they dominate their thoughts. But what does he say to his disciples? We aren't supposed to be like that. We're to seek him first in his way of doing, and then all these things will be given to you, including your time. And if you are just joining me, you may wonder, like, where did redeem her time come from? It came from Ephesians 5:15 through 16, which says, look carefully how you live. We have to pay attention. Not as unwise, but as wise, okay? I have a choice. I have to have intention around which way I'm going. Redeeming the time, or some versions say making the best use of it. So there's the implementation piece, because these are difficult days. That's why I've got to be committed and dedicated. Amen to some difficult days. Anyone ever feel like, all day long, it just feels like there's someone or something trying to pull you off track? Now, I'm not here to like say the devil's hiding behind everything, but I do want to say that his number one tactic, I believe, is to get us busy and distracted. Because when he can, keep us from actually investing our time in the things that are building the kingdom, hello, we're no threat to him and we're no use to the kingdom, right? So we want to be good stewards of the time that's been given to us. In Matthew 25, Jesus talks about this, and he talked about that he told the parable of the three servants, right? That one servant, he went and buried his talent out of fear. He managed it, which means to keep contained or under control, but what was the result? Zero, zero, like nothing gained, nothing lost, but nothing gained, right? And so we may think like that's not so bad. At least he didn't lose any of it. Except we look at the master's response. What was the master's response? Like, get away from me, you wicked and lazy servant. Wow. Like you had no idea why I gave this to you. My goal was not for you to keep it buried in the ground or keep it contained or keep it from getting away. We have only to look at the other two servants to see what was the master's desire. Because he said, well done, good and faithful servant. What did they do? They understood it didn't belong to them. Their role was to steward it by investing it with an expectation of return, knowing that the master was coming back, right? And that they would be accountable to him. That first guy, right? Like he thought he knew the master, but he really didn't. And so I want you to remember, like this isn't a like to make us feel a pressure, but like a privilege. Like every hour is an opportunity to multiply his kingdom, right? Like God invites us into this partnership. And this is why CEOs don't chase time or bury it. We invest it. We don't manage it. We multiply it. And we don't spend it. We scale it. So let's talk about the two different ways that you can be approaching time. Okay. Way number one is what I call busyness owner time. And I spell it like this so you can see the busyness owner. So it's not just business, it's busyness owner. Okay. Here is the definition of a busyness owner. There we go. Okay. Of a business owner, someone who is putting in a lot of time, right? They're busy. They're not just sitting around hoping and praying, right? They're actually doing stuff, but they're not getting the results they're praying for. Or maybe they get to a certain point and then they just feel plateaued or stuck. And that they think the answer is what? Doing more, right? But here's the thing. They are always chasing the fact that there's not enough time or that they're not doing enough or that they're not enough. That was that not enoughness slope that I chased, right? Whoever feels like there's not enough, right? Like you're behind, like time gets away, like you're running to catch up. What CEOs do with their time? Yes, I will. Okay, ready? CEOs don't chase time, they invest it. CEOs don't manage time, they multiply it. And CEOs don't spend time, they scale it. Okay, and we'll get into CEOs in just a second here. Okay, but business owners are doing busyness as usual, right? Their time is filling up with all these random things all day long. Even if they had a plan on when they started, right? They're reacting. Maybe they're trying to manage, keep their time contained or controlled from getting away from them, right? But busyness becomes the norm. And some of the tactics that busyness owners use are multitasking. How many of us multitask? Right? Thinking it's our superpower, it's our kryptonite. Did you know it takes you 50% longer to do that same thing? And you're going to make 40% more mistakes that you'll have to go back and fix? Or what about this one? Constant task switching. It takes 20 minutes to get your brain in full focus, right, on something, especially if you get off track, even if it's just for a minute or two, and then try to come back to it, which is why we so often have so many open tabs in your head. I wish I had kept this, but I worked with a coach years ago before I knew all this stuff, and I thought I had a schedule. And so she had me like do this time audit for a week. And so I was so proud of myself. I had every box filled in, I had it color coded, all this stuff, and I showed it to her, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, your time is all over the place." I was scattering my time. I wasn't scaling it because I was literally jumping from one thing to next and filling in every little nook and cranny, thinking that was going to make me more productive and more profitable. But really, I was just a business owner, right? And then as business owners, we wonder why it's hard to say no to distractions, why it's hard to shut down at a set time, why it's hard to protect our focus, and why we feel guilty for resting. So we're told, or we tell ourselves, like, I just have to get better at managing my time, right? But here's the problem with time management. Let me say this. Time management is slowly killing your business growth and you. When you keep stacking up your time blocks and your to-do lists and all the goals, right, that you're going to hit this year, like it is literally putting a cap on your growth. Because when you're trying to manage anything, you're trying to keep it contained, right? And in my story, if you've heard my story before, like I literally ended up with this ball in my throat for over a year and finally got the diagnosis of hystericus globus. I had this sensation of a ball in my throat because really I was just anxious about all my time. And I was a business owner all the time. I was always doing, I was always working, I was never done, and I was never getting to whatever that next place was. And that was really hard. And I missed out on a lot of things with my family and my husband, and even, the impact it was having on my health, right? So can you relate to some busyness ownerness, right? That you're putting in a lot of time, but not seeing a lot of results. And it's really hard to turn off the brain, right? You're always focusing on doing. And at some point, we reach the point of diminishing returns and we miss out on the rest of life, right? And then we often hit burnout. So here's what I want to say to all of you business owners out there. More hours does not mean more results. Let me say that again. More hours does not mean more results. Okay. Parkinson's law says your work fills the time you give it. Have you ever found this to be true? You give yourself all day, and how long does that thing take you? All day, right? You give yourself all day and night, and it takes even longer, right? You give yourself all week, right? Like, but what happens also on the opposite is if we say, okay, I need to get this done in the next 2 hours, it's amazing how we can find a way to get her done when we need to get her done, right? And so I want to teach you, as if you are a business owner, that you can work less hours when you have time scaling strategies. It's knowing when it's time to work and when it's not, and how that time is tied to this bigger purpose. And again, let me just speak to this area of team because you're going to hear me talking a lot about team this week, okay? Because if you want to scale, at some point, you are going to max out your 24 hours. So you are going to have to bring on people, whether it's somebody who's doing 2 hours a week, 2 hours of work a week, or 10 hours a week, or more, right? But here's the thing. Your team starts with you. You are the first person you hire, which is why we start with how you're approaching your time, because that will have a ripple effect. If you are sending messages all hours of the day and night to your team, what is that going to say to them? You're setting this example, right? And you're setting this expectation, and you're not honoring one another's time, and you're not really freeing up time, and it's just costing you more time and money. Way too many business owners and busyness owners tell me, Lissa, I brought on team, but it was a waste of time and money. That's because they didn't get this thing right about how to multiply your time. Okay, so we don't want to stay in business owner mode. We want to go into CEO mode. I'm going to put dots here. But CEO in my world is not defined the way that the rest of the world defines it. We define this as a Christ-empowered operator, right? Here's where the stewardship comes in, right? Those servants, it was not all about them, right? They were empowered by the master to take what they'd been given and to expand it for his kingdom, right? So as a CEO of your God-given life and business, you have time, right? That's the first thing a CEO does is trust that she has time and that it's more than enough and that she's been given this time to invest on behalf of the master. And this is where time scaling schedules don't just help you keep track of your appointments and your to-dos, but they help you wisely invest your time. because we don't want to spend it. We don't want to just waste it, right? For sure. We don't want to just spend it. We want to invest it. And we want to be paying attention to what it's producing. So here's the one habit that really made a difference for me. And if you are already in my world, you are going to be nod your head. So if you've already, like once I say this, you're going to be like, yes, yes, and amen. Drop it in the chat. And that is this, asking this question, what is it time for? What is it time for? Right? Like if time is this resource that we have to pay attention to where we are investing it, right? What is it time for is so, so important. And I won't go into all of it, but the devotional this morning was from Ecclesiastes 3, which talks about there is a season and a time for everything, right? And if you look through those verses, it goes through a time for this, a time for that, a time for this, a time for this, right? The reason he lays that all out is there's wisdom. I mean, Ecclesiastes is all about wisdom and how we apply it in living, right? To knowing what it's time for. And so as a CEO, you need to know when is it time to work and when is it time not to work. And right now, I want to give you permission and direction to schedule your refills first. That's one of the things that I work with clients on is scheduling our Sabbath and our Selah first and not waiting for the leftovers. There's a reason why, like that happens he wants the first fruits, right? And here's what's so interesting. I've had CEOs like actually put this into practice and see the results. They used to work 24/7, but now they work 24/6 and not even 24/6, right? But like, okay, right? Like I'm setting that aside, right? Or maybe even like 24/4. Maybe I work with women to help them create a 4-day work week. Like, wow. And it's amazing, just like with the tithe, like when you trust God with your time, how he helps multiply it, and there is more than enough. And if you're right now going, Lissa, but you don't know my schedule, you don't know all the things I have to do, I'm going to say number one, you're right. But I teach something called capacity by design because I find that so many people are letting their time fill up and be overflowing by default. And so we have to be intentional about that process. Okay. One of the things we have to do, yes, biblical living, when we follow it, right? Everything else falls into place. Yeah. And I have a whole segment that is going to be part of the new CEO Impact Program that's going to be talking about Sabbath and how that is such a good practice when it comes to our time, right? Okay, another thing I just want to mention before we get into kind of workshopping this out, there is a difference between boundaries on your time and barriers on your time. Okay, because I have this conversation often with women, right? Like I feel selfish if I put boundaries on my time. How many of you have felt that way? Boundaries are selfish, right? Actually, boundaries are good stewardship. I want you to hear that again. Boundaries are good stewardship because they help guard what you want to grow, like the garden that you plant that you want to keep Bambi out of. Hello, so that you can have great vegetables to feed your family. You are not being selfish to put, a fence around it. You are protecting what matters inside, right? And so we have to remember that like it is not selfish to put boundaries around our time when it is protecting what God has entrusted to us. But the problem is that so many people, especially business owners, are building these barriers around their time, right? They're called time blocks. Anyone tried it? Drop time block in the chat if you have, right? Again, back to my audit. I thought I was saving time because I literally had a block for every single hour of my day. But do you know what research shows us? Time blocking actually wastes 1 to 3 hours a day because it takes time to set them, to reset them, and to recover from when they crash into each other because you just gave up, right, on trying to make anything happen. Anyone ever feel that way? What if you could get an extra hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours back in your day? That can happen when you ditch the time blocks. But you might be like, Lisa, what do I do instead? I'm going to introduce you to a concept called time anchor zones. Okay. Time anchor zones. I believe every single person listening to this has 5 daily zones. And I go more into this in some of the other programs and stuff like that. But there are 2 refills and there are 3 pour outs. And what's really important about them is number one, they're not tightly packed. They're not task focused, but they are spacious and they're purposeful. And just like an anchor, right, has to have a line that has a little bit of give to be able to respond to the wind and the waves, these time anchor zones pull us back when we drift and keep us right what in the area of what it's time for. And that's something that I teach inside the Ideal Week. And so I actually pulled this up this morning because I was working with a client this summer and she told me, she's like, listen, I have so many things to fit into my life. She works with women about hearing God's voice. So she needs time, not just like 30 minutes, but like a couple of hours to like sit with the Lord. Her marriage, she's a grandma. she serves in her community in church and she wants to go to the beach because she lives by the coast and then she's got this ministry and a podcast, but she's like, Lisa, there's never time for it all. And you know what she told me? She said, I'm afraid I'm going to get to the end of summer and I'm not going to be any closer to what God has called me to. I'm just going to feel like just time just got away. Here, this is literally, I'm reading right from her message here. She says, I finally got the time anchors in place. And she says, I have to say, I like the way it looks because it doesn't make me feel so blocked into specific tasks for every single minute of my day and that I just end up pushing those blocks, kicking the can down the road, or eventually deleting them anyway. So it's kind of pointless to have a cluttered calendar with all these blocks when I'm not even going to do half the stuff that I assigned to myself. Can you relate to that, right? Like you take the time to build the blocks and then you just kick the can down the road, right? Or you feel bad when you don't get to them all, or you work longer than you wanted to or needed to in order to try to get it all in. This is why typical time management schedules don't work. They're not real life. They're not even the way you want to build life, right? Time scaling schedules are going to help you be present to what it's time for. Yes, there is time to do everything that we are meant to do. You're right, Emmy, which is why we have to know what am I to do, when am I to do it, and how does it connect to something bigger, right? Those are the three things we're going to keep coming back to this week. When I was a teacher, guess what? I taught middle school. There was a bell that rang every 43 minutes, right? And so like that, like literally like told me what to do next. When I became a homeschooling mom, I remember my friend saying to me, Hey, Lissa, you have to be home to homeschool. Hello, right? We were like going off doing all kinds of other, I mean, fun things that, homeschool-ish things or whatever, but not really actually doing the things we're supposed to do. Like, okay, right? So when it comes to our business, what happens is so many of us, right? All of a sudden now we have this freedom, especially if you get to do this from, your own home. But then what happens? There's all these distractions. There's all these other things, right? One of the clients I worked with, so I work with women who have online businesses. I also work with women with brick and mortars. I worked with a couple gals. One had a coffee shop, one had a boutique. And when you have a brick and mortar, you have to have business hours. Why? Because otherwise you're not going to be in business, right? Like you're not going to know when to be there, and nobody else is going to know when you're there to serve them, right? But here's the thing. So often in business, we don't have those. Or you may be like, Lissa, I do have business hours. I work from, 9 to 3. Okay. Do you really? Do you really stay in that mode during that time? Or are you, like we talked about earlier, scattered all over the place? Here's where we need time scaling business hour boundaries. And there are three parts to this, and it's going to be part of your homework. And so if you want to see what these three parts are, you can turn to the day one page, which has the three boxes, and you'll see these three words down at the bottom. The first thing we have to do is decide how many hours and like what days a week and how many hours what's that going to look like? Okay. Like we have to decide that because no business is going to be in business if they're kind of like, when I feel like it, when I happen to show up, I hope you caught me. Sorry you missed me. So that's gonna be the first one is making that decision. And we are going to do that today. The second D on here is defend. Now, this is not like, but again, if that business matters because God has called you to it, how are you making sure that you actually stick to those boundaries? Did you know 52% of the times that you check your phone are during business hours? 52%, right? So right there, maybe there's some things you need to put in place. I don't know. I got this new update like yesterday or the day before, and it like has my phone like constantly in focus mode and like do not disturb, which is fine, right? Like I don't like it ringing, dinging, and pinging at me, but like I was like, oh wait, there's a call this morning I actually would have liked to answer had I known that it was actually coming in. But maybe there's some things we need to put some speed bumps on here. Maybe there's some things that we need to remove from our area around us, especially if you're working from home, right? To defend those hours. And then the third part is we have to declare them. We have to communicate them, right? Like to yourself first, to your team, to your clients, and to your family and friends. And here is one of my soapboxes. Do not apologize. Have you ever seen that sign hanging on a storefront that says, sorry, we're closed? Like, don't apologize that you are not open if you were open when you said you were going to be. Like my friend who owns a boutique here in town, like she's only open at the store Wednesday or Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, because guess what? The rest of the week she is with her little kids and taking care of her home and serving in ministries. So I hope that she's not apologizing for not being at the store those days, right? But when she is at the store, guess what? She's fully there, right? And she is doing that when she knows when she's there, she knows exactly what to do that's going to help grow her business, which we'll actually talk more about what to do tomorrow. But today we're talking about what does this look like? So what I want you to do is grab out this sheet, or if you don't have this in front of you, then just grab a piece of paper. Okay. We are going to make this decision, right? If you can make it right now before we're done, then amazing. But if not, by the end of today or before we start tomorrow, I want to make sure that you've made this decision and then you've posted it inside the community. Okay. Now, the first question on here is, what are your current hours and revenue? Okay. Here's what I want you to write down. Currently, be honest, because it's not going to serve you if you're not. You may not like the number you write down. It may be less than you want it to be. That's okay. It may be more than you want it to be. That's okay. But write down right now, what are your current hours per week? And what is your current revenue per month? This is one thing I find with business owners is they don't know their numbers. Why? Because we, A, don't take the time to ask and look at it, right? We're too busy. And B, because we don't really like what it says, right? Let me flip to this so you can have a see what we're doing at. Okay, so what is that current one? And then I want you to jot down scale of 1 to 10. How does that feel right now? With 1 being like lousy, I do not want to stay here any longer. Alyssa, help me. To 10, like this is like my ideal dream. And I couldn't imagine my hours and my dollars being anything better than this. Hopefully, there's always room to grow, right? I'm not at a 10 because I'm always looking for, right? How can I scale the time that I have? Right. So, what I want you to do, you have to be honest with yourself. Number one, looking at the numbers and then noticing how it feels. And I want you to jot this down, whether you're on the 1 end of the scale or the 10 end of the scale. Why do you feel that way? Like, are there ways that this is causing stress? Are there ways this is causing friction? Are there ways that this is just, maybe it's affecting your health? Maybe it's affecting a relationship? Maybe you're working a lot of hours, but you're not making much money, and now you don't have time to go do these other things that really matter to you. I want you to jot down a couple of things while we're here about what's working or not working about this. Is it just busyness or is it actually fruitfulness? Because busyness is not the same thing as fruitfulness. Okay, I'll give you a minute just to kind of, reflect on that. And then we're not going to stay there. Okay, that's the good news. And again, here's where we don't shoulda, woulda, coulda, and place the blame on other things or people, right? We have to take responsibility for our own time. And we also don't shame ourselves for where we are. Okay. All right. Second thing on here is your desired roadie. So what would you like those hours per week to look like? And what would you like that income to be? Okay. So each one of these. So on this one, you've got hours and dollars and and then again, I want you to kind of write it in that same way. And underneath that one, I want you to just jot down, how would that feel? And more importantly, what would that do? What would that change? What would that open up opportunities for? And it doesn't matter if this number of hours is more or less than this one, right? But like, what would this do for you? I want you to get this vision in front of you. And this is actually something I would encourage you to spend some more time. Like, what would that actually look and feel like if that was actually what kind of time I was investing and what kind of return I was getting on that investment? And that's a good thing, right? Here's where we now start getting strategic, that we don't just have to keep increasing the hours to increase the dollars. Like, it is possible to increase the outcome without increasing the hours going in. And it's even possible to decrease these at the same time that we're increasing this. Okay, that's where I work with clients to help them get strategic around where they're investing their time and how they're measuring their ROTI, their return on time invested. Okay, so once you've got that in mind, now the 3 boxes that are down here, mine didn't, they didn't quite get very even when I drew them out ahead of time. So sorry, if you're looking at the workshop, at the workbook, they're very nice and even. But okay, so say for example, let's just use an example that I want to work 24 hours in a week. Okay. So I want you to come up with whatever number you have for the number of hours per week you want to work and thinking about your season of life. Okay. Just so you know, am an empty nester. My kids are all spread on opposite sides of the country. I'm a grandma, but my grandson is far away as well. So my time looks a little bit different than, when my kids were at home, or some of my friends who have, grandkids in the area, or adult children in the area, or maybe kids, again, under the roof and things like that, right? Also think about like, what other things am I involved in? Right. And here's where as CEOs, sometimes we have to make some strategic decisions about what we're saying yes to and what we're not. Because sometimes it means that we have to say no to some things in order to say yes to something that really matters. Okay, so say 24 hours is mine, right? What are three different ways that that could look? Okay, maybe it's 6 hours, 4 days a week. Anyone ever wish you could have a 4-day work week? I worked with a client recently who came to me at the beginning of summer and was like, Lissa, I can't keep working 6 hours a week, especially in the summertime. Like, it's going to burn me out. And so we got real strategic around how she could do what she needed to do in 4 days. Right? So what would that look like? Or maybe it's maybe I'm going to do 4 hours. Why is my H looking really funky? Over 6 days. Okay, that's fine, right? Like maybe that's what works. Maybe you need smaller chunks of time because of kids and things like that, right? Like that's possible. Or maybe it's going to be I just want to stack it all on 3 days. That has 8 hours and put the hours first to keep it. Here's the thing, my math brain, I used to be a math teacher. Like there are so many combinations for the number 24, right? Because it's got lots of factors and things like that. So there's a lot of ways to break this up. And guess what? It doesn't have to be even. You could be like, I'm going to work, 6 hours on 2 days and then 10 hours on, one day or something like that. So it doesn't have to be even. But what I want you to do is I want you to start thinking a little differently than maybe how you've always done it. And this is true whether you already have, quote, business hours established or whether you're kind of just trying to find nooks and crannies, right? And I work with women. I have a couple of clients who are working a full-time business and I'm sorry, they're working a full-time job and they're also growing a business. So again, don't feel bad if your numbers aren't as big, right? Because if that's you, there's no way you're going to be putting 24 hours in. You might be putting 5 hours in. And again, that's okay. It's not about how much time we are investing, it's about how we are protecting that time and what kind of return on time invested we're getting. Okay, so it's not as much about the number, but I want you to think about what are three different ways that you could break up that number. And what you're going to do in your homework today is you're going to decide what is it that you would like to make your business hours. Okay, like which one of these, and it may be one of the three you put the first time, or you may come up with another option later, but like which of these is what's going to feel really good, right? And help you to really see this happen. Okay, so that's going to be your homework is to share that in our group, right? And again, it doesn't matter how many the total number of hours is. Don't worry if somebody has more hours than you or you have less than somebody else. That's not what matters. It's what you're doing with that time that matters. And in just a few minutes, I'll have those of you on live get to share in just a second. Okay, but there are two more steps we have to do. The next one is to defend. Once I decide, right? I've decided, I made a decision, I'm committing to it. Now, how am I going to protect that? Which means if I'm working 6 hours, 4 days a week, that means I can't be, throwing in appointments every single day of the week, right? So I'm going to give you guys some time scaling top five at the end of each day, and that'll be part of it. Okay. It also means that when I am in this 6 hour time block, so that I have, a 3-day weekend, that I'm not, answering every single call that comes in or I'm not in my inbox constantly and letting it get me off track because otherwise what's going to happen? You're not going to get it done in four days and you're going to start working in 5, 6, and 7 days, right? So it's like how do we put on those blinders, right? How do we communicate then as the third one? How am I going to declare this so that other people know? If I don't tell my husband, like, this is when I'm working, guess what? He doesn't know, right? So, like, of course he's going to call whenever he has a minute or when he needs something or whatever. Like, if I don't, communicate this with my team, of course I'm going to be hearing all the time, right? Or they're going to be surprised why they're not hearing back from me. So we have to also communicate this because these things matter, and affect other people, right? And when you learn to honor your time and your commitments to your time, you teach other people to honor your time and their time, right? You teach your team to honor their time, right? And here is where, when you know what it's time for, you will be more focused, more present, more filled, more fruitful, right? Because when it's time to work, right, I'm not letting all these other things in. And that's not because these other things don't matter. When I teach my clients how to build out an ideal week, there is time for every single thing that matters. Okay. But it's that I don't have to be distracted by it right now. I had a client tell me one time, she's like, Lisa, when something pops in my head and I'm sitting there working, I feel like I have to get up and do it right now, otherwise I'm gonna forget. I'm like, okay, well, let's find a way to say, hey, is this something that's happening, on some kind of repeated basis? And then let's make time for it so you don't have to jump up right in the moment when it comes across your brain, right? And anyone else that's squirrel chaser, like that idea comes in your head and you feel like I got to go do this now, or like all of a sudden you're down that rabbit trail, right? That's because we don't know what it's time for and we don't have a plan for our time. And so we're just reacting, right, all day long. And you can do that if you want to, but you will, I guarantee, feel like you don't have enough time and you will not be seeing the results in your time that you really want. Okay, so we have to have business hour boundaries. We have to know, when am I working and then when am I not? Now, does that mean that you can't ever work a little bit longer if there's something going on? Of course. You're the CEO. You get to decide. Sometimes there is a need for that, right? But we're talking about, like, in the day to day. Like if my husband, when I told him he gets off work at 4, and so I want to be done by 4. So that way, I'm just present and available for whatever's going on, making dinner, walking the dogs, whatever our evening holds, that kind of thing. Now, are there evenings where, like, I'm like, hey, hun, I'm getting ready for this workshop, so I've got this to do. Guess what? I didn't even do that last night. But anyway, like, that's okay, right? I'm communicating this, right? But then he knows, like, this is time for him, or this is time for, me to take care of the laundry or the dishes or whatever other things, right, I need to do because you know what it's time for, right? So let me give you the time scaling schedules top 5. Ready for these? And then we'll open this up for a little bit of Q&A before we finish up today, okay? Number 1, I'm going to challenge you. Commit to putting that Sabbath and Selah time first. Like, don't wait to see if there's time left over in your day or week. Like, give him the first fruits and see what happens. Number 2, when you are looking at your time, make sure that you are planning in this, what I call CEO time, like that visionary, strategic, like as I'm thinking about growth things, not just checking boxes. Like that should be a part of that, right? That should be a part of this time when we're working. Number 3, think about how you can chunk things, right? So maybe it's like you're working on a podcast, right? And so how can I kind of put this together? I used to spread my podcast like one step out every day of the week, so it would be done by the end of the week. But again, every single time I sat down to do it, I had to like get back to where I was. Now, Mondays are my podcast days, and I'm able to stay in that mode and get the majority of it done, right? So I don't have to keep coming back to it, right? The same thing goes true in your personal life. Like if you are going to work 4 days a week, then save one day for like those personal appointments and errands and coffee dates and meetings. I do my best to schedule all of those things on a Friday because I am focused, this time, those other 4 days of my week. Now, are there some times where, like a hairdresser can't get me in or somebody needs or wants to meet or something else? Yes, but it's not like consistently, randomly all over the place, right? I'm being very strategic about that time. That's number 3. Number 4, make sure when you do planning, you're doing 7-day planning. Like way too many people try to plan one day at a time, and it's like all you can see is what's right in front of you, right? And you can't plan out usually more than a week at a time because there are some, things that are going to kind of, ebb and flow and that kind of thing. But when you decide what it's time for before your week starts, and guess what? Most of what we do in business is reoccurring. So it's not like you're reinventing the wheel. And we'll talk tomorrow about how to not just add it to your to-do list every day. Like you will find that you get into these rhythms and patterns, and then things start taking less time. And then number 5 is communicate those business hours. Like honor your time, make sure you know what they are, and then teach other people to honor them, whether it's your team or your clients or your family or your friends, right? Women come to me all the time saying, Lisa, I don't have time. You don't understand. There just isn't time, right? But guess what? When we sit down and we put together the things we talked about today, understanding what it's time for, building out those time anchor zones, creating their ideal week template, knowing what their business hours are. And then what I do is go a step further with my clients. Now we break down, what do you do with that time? Right? Like, how do we make sure that what you need to do fits into that time? Like, wouldn't it be amazing to sit down to a 4-hour work block and know exactly what to do and get to the end of that and be like, okay, that I did exactly what I was supposed to do. And it feels really amazing. Like that's what happens when you have time scaling schedules. And then when you have the next 2 things that we're going to be talking about, because your business should give you more time, not less. It should give you choices with your time, not less. But that only happens when you are clear on what it's time for, when you're consistent with what it's time for, and when it's connected to what it's time for that matters, right? And this is why scaling your business isn't going to happen until you learn to scale your time. So here is your homework for today, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A for those of you who are on live. At the bottom of this worksheet, right? You take some time to go back and think through what's working or not working about your current situation. Okay? Because the more time you think about that, like that's going to help you in making these decisions. Look at what is my desire? What do I want my roadie to be? What are the hours that I want to work per week and how much would I like to get from that? Okay? Because that's going to make you start getting strategic, but think about why that matters. What would that do for you? Okay? Then decide what is the layout that I'm going to do? How many days and how many hours per day am I going to commit to? Okay, consistently. All right. And then I want you to go and post that over inside the community on today's homework post. Okay. And then you can start thinking about how am I going to protect them? So start paying attention to what are the squirrels or the shiny objects that pop up and I feel like I want to chase. How can I eliminate them or how can I address them before this time, my work time, or how can I, like what do I need to have in place or not in place? Right. And then how am I going to declare this? How am I going to communicate this? But first, you have to make the decision. Okay. And again, when you have a team of one, whereas you yourself and you, or 101 or more, like your time is not going to be productive or profitable if and until you learn how to protect it, right? And then you're teaching other people how to do that as well. And that's something that, we'll talk about on that time scaling strategy session is what does your current time investment look like in your current results? What do you want it to be? Right. And then we're going to look at how does this pair together with your goals and the level of team so that I can help you to map out what that would look like. Okay, so if you want to apply for one of those calls, let me grab the link and stick this in the chat for you. And I will make sure that that top five is in the replay that's going out. So hold tight. That way you have all of the top five in there. So that way we can come back to that. But we are right at the top of the hour. So I just want to open it up for a couple of minutes. I have a couple of minutes for anyone who is on live who has a question around your business hours and your business hour boundaries. Okay, what is it that is coming up for you as you're looking at this or as you're seeking to make a decision that you're going to be willing to commit to? Anyone who's on live have a question, you should be able to unmute yourself and then you can share what you want to share. And I would love to give some feedback. And again, you can ask questions, especially when you post your answers inside the community. I will be over there engaging and responding. So if you have a question, you're more than welcome to answer it over there as well. Any questions from anyone who's on live? Would it make a difference if you not just had a schedule, but you had a time scaling schedule where you knew what it was time for? And one element of that was knowing when your business hours are and being able to distraction proof those. Would that make a difference in the results of your time? Like again, here's where it all comes down to time because you can have all these amazing strategies, but if and until you actually know what it's time for and you have those protection, those boundaries there, your time will get scattered all over the place. Debbie, you have a question?
So this comes back to, for me, the how exciting the theory is, but then reality. And how do you do this if every day is different? If things vary from day to day, you never know what's going to come up. I mean, it's hard to plan like all your personal appointments on a certain day when you have to, work with somebody else, or even in the business side. How do you do this when, I mean, like, I don't really have set hours. I work when I have to work because there's seasons that I'm busier and there's times that I'm not. So do you just keep redoing this, based on the week or?
That's a great question. First of all, let me address that question. I recommend you revisit your ideal week plan once a season. So, like, this is perfect. We're going from summer into fall, right? So, there may have been some things at church or in your community or even with work that were on pause or hold over the summertime, and now you're coming back to them. So, that's a great time. If you've had some kind of transition in life, maybe it's not based on the calendar, maybe it's just based on something that's going on in your life, right? Like, okay, come back to. If you notice there's friction or frustration or things are falling through the cracks, that's when you come back to it, right? because you're paying attention to the needs of the season that you are in. And so here is where like you're gonna have to, pay, like be intentional around number one, identifying what are my important things and making sure like, okay, I know what things are top priorities and what things, are just kind of nice to haves, but not essentials. And then when you build out your ideal week time template, like I call it a template because you literally can reuse it every week. And what you do is like, it's not just like, oh, I look at this paper one time and okay, this works for me. Like, no, I take that. I actually use my weekly planner, Hello Redeem Her Time Planner, and I'm able to like map out those 5 time anchors for my days, and see what the week looks like. But guess what? Because I've already done the work of creating this is ideally where things go based on what I know my needs are. I'm not starting from scratch every single week and hoping I remember. That's the mistake that so many of us make. I plan my week, Lissa. Oh shoot, I forgot that this week. No, I haven't done that in a while. It should be on that template that is giving us, a framework to work from. And then yes, week to week, you may have changes and you may make a plan for the week, Debbie, and then like you go, into, today is Tuesday. So you come into Tuesday and things looked a little bit different than you had planned. It's okay. Then you're just able to shift those things around and respond instead of react. Um, but what it's doing, what's going to happen is if you don't have any boundaries at all around these 5 different time anchors, then everything just starts all falling into one bucket, and then that gets really frustrating. And then it feels like you have no control. So here's the thing, and you and I have talked, in some of our stuff, and you have access to me as a client. Like I think we do have more control over things around our time than we think we do. We just have to make some decisions, and we have to then also like be really intentional about it and communicate it. And, and so there are challenges, but I know that it's possible, regardless of what those things are. So I hope that's some encouragement to you that, yeah, but it is something you're going to need to revisit. It's not a one and done thing. And then it sits over here and, it's supposed to work for me magically. It isn't. Right. But it's a living, breathing document. As I notice things aren't working, I might shift something, right? And move it around or something or remove it for a season. But it's going to be a template to start from. So that way it's not just, hoping to remember each week.
So knowing what you know about my schedule and things that go on, what do you think about trying like to schedule certain morning hours to do my work that I have to get done and leaving some hours in the afternoon as optional that either I choose to continue to work or I do, something personal based on how the day goes.
Yeah. I mean, and I just had this conversation with some clients yesterday. Pay attention to when do you have the most focus and energy and least amount of distractions, right? Maybe it is in the morning time. And so afternoon is when kind of everything tends to fall off the rails. Then put those things that are those high priorities that need your super focus in the morning versus, later on in the day when you don't feel like it or when everybody else needs and wants you. So yeah, paying attention to the best times of your day or the best times of your week is a great strategy to thinking about where am I going to try things. And guess what? There's no right or wrong. So I would say try it, Debbie, and see how it works. See if it makes a difference. And sometimes it's just like we just have to think from a different direction because we've been doing what we've always been doing, or we haven't had a plan for what we've been doing and wonder why it's not working. Sometimes we have to mix things up a little bit, and you might find, hey, that was the fix, right? So I would say, like in your case, knowing like what are the minimum hours, especially for your business, that I need to put in on a consistent basis to make this thing happen. Now, in your case, I know you bring on cases, so sometimes it's going to be more than that. So that's where it can expand, but at least you're committed to those minimum hours regardless, and then you can make changes, as needed. So, yeah. All right. Anyone else who's on live? Melanie says you have great systems in place. One of my challenges is identifying and condensing systems to automate tasks. Well, good, because tomorrow we're talking about the systems, right? So today is about, what, when, tomorrow is the what, right? And these things all play together. You're going to hear me talk about the S's. You need time scaling schedules, you need time scaling systems, and you need time scaling strategies. And it's all coupled together with time scaling stewardship, right? But we have to know, again, just to your point, Melanie, what to do. That's going to be the systems. When to do it, that's going to be the schedules, and why it matters, how it connects to this bigger growth goal or purpose or whatever that is, that's the strategy piece. So I love that you're asking that question, right? But here's the thing. We can create these amazing systems for you, Melanie, or anybody else who's listening to this, right? Like we can create all the like, here's what to do and here's the order to do it and here's who's going to do it and all those things. But guess what? If that time isn't being set aside and protected to actually execute the systems. Or, hope, like you said, some of it can be automated, some of it can be delegated, some of it may have to actually be you. Like it's not going to happen. So that's why I start with the schedules first. Because if we don't have that time set aside, it doesn't matter how beautiful our systems are, they're not going to work, right? Because we have to make sure it's time. It's time. I hope you guys hear that this week. It's time that's going to make everything else work. Time is the key to all of this, right? So, anyway, yes, come back tomorrow and we will talk about okay, now that you know when it's time to work and when it's not, now we want to get strategic, especially if you are telling me, like, Lisa, I want to make this happen within this, whatever this is that you wrote down and decided on. I can't wait to see. So, please put that over in the community today. Um, Now we have to get strategic because you may be looking at that going, Lisa, 4 hours? I don't know if that's enough to get everything I have to do, get it done. Yes, it is. Here's where we're going to be strategic and put our CEO hat on and really decide what needs to be done and then create some systems around it so that we can get those things done in less time and they're actually the things that are going to move the needle. Because how many of us are spending time consuming content, right? Or creating content or checking inboxes or folding laundry and we wonder why this work block doesn't feel like enough. Okay. So tomorrow I'm going to show you how do you like actually sit down when you say you're going to work and actually know exactly what to do and not waste time trying to figure out what you should be doing or where to find it. Okay. So that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow. All right. Thanks for joining me today. I pray that you were blessed. Again, if you have questions or other things that come up as you're thinking about this, please put them over inside the community. I would love to be able to respond to you over there so that way others can learn as well. And I will see you guys back here tomorrow where we talk about how to activate your team output, which remember starts with you, with time scaling systems. So see you tomorrow.